The car wash humiliation. The sound of rushing water filled the small car wash bay, echoing like a drumbeat against the metal walls. Keanu stood beside his old, dusty car, waiting as the attendants scrubbed away the dirt. He wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans, nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. But even in his simplicity, people still glanced at him, whispering softly, recognizing the face they had seen on screens for years. He didn't like the attention, but he was used to it. Still, today felt different. Something heavy sat in his chest, and he didn't know why. Then, a voice cut through the noise, sharp, familiar, unforgettable. "So, this is what you've become?" Keanu froze. He turned slowly, and there she was. His ex, the one he had not seen for years. She was dressed in polished heels, her hair shining like she had just walked out of a magazine. Her car, a luxury model, gleamed as if it had never touched dust. Her presence was loud even in silence. The workers stopped for a moment, sensing the tension. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, not with kindness, not with care, but with a cold laugh hiding behind them. "You're washing this old thing yourself? After all those movies, all that fame, and you're here like this?" The words were like glass, cutting into him. Keanu did not reply at first. He only looked at her, calm on the outside, though inside, a storm was building. He remembered the past, the moments of love, the promises, and the way it had all shattered when pride and money got in between. She had left him when he was at his lowest, chasing brighter lights, bigger names, and now she had found him again, but not with affection, only with the desire to humiliate. People around them began to notice. Some whispered, others watched in silence. The attendants pretended to keep working, but their eyes shifted toward the drama unfolding. Keanu felt his heart sink, not because of her words, but because of the memory of who she used to be. Someone who once held his hand and said she believed in him. Now she looked at him like he was less than dirt. "You always pretended you were different," she said, her voice rising. "Humble, quiet, kind. But look at you. Too kind to fight back. Too weak to stand tall. That's why you lost me. That's why you'll always lose." Her words carried poison. For a moment, the weight of shame pressed on Keanu's shoulders. He could feel the eyes of strangers burning into him, waiting to see what he would do. But he stayed quiet. His silence was not weakness. It was something deeper, something she could not understand. Finally he spoke, his voice steady, calm, and almost soft. "Cars can shine, clothes can shine, even money can shine. But respect is the only thing that never loses its value." There was a pause. The crowd held its breath. She laughed, mocking him. Respect won't buy you a better car. Respect won't keep you from being humiliated in front of everyone. Respect won't save you from being forgotten." Her words echoed in the small bay, but Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he looked at her with eyes that held no anger, only sadness. Sadness for what she had become, sadness for what was lost. He knew the battle she wanted, loud, cruel, public, was not a battle he would ever fight, because battles like that could only be won by pride, and pride was not something he carried anymore. The workers looked between them, their brushes hanging mid-air. A young boy, no more than 15, who worked there to earn a little money for his family, stepped closer. His hands were wet, his shirt stained with soap. He looked at Keanu, then at the woman, and then back again. "Sir," the boy said softly, "my father always says respect is bigger than money." The words came like a spark in the silence. The crowd murmured. The ex rolled her eyes, annoyed. But Keanu turned to the boy, his face softening into a small smile. In that moment, The humiliation lost its power. The shame began to fade, and something stronger took its place. But deep down, Keanu knew this was only the beginning. The storm that started at a car wash was about to grow bigger, louder, and more painful. Yet it would also carry lessons about humility, about resilience, and about the strength of kindness in a world that valued pride. And as the water sprayed against the car once more, Keanu realized one truth. Sometimes, life tests you not in silence, but in front of everyone, when you least expect it. And how you stand in that moment defines who you really are. The silence after humiliation, the car wash, slowly emptied, but the silence left behind was heavier than the sound of rushing water. Keanu stood near his car, wiping the last drops off the hood with his bare hand, even though the attendants had already finished. He did not look at his ex again. He did not need to. Her laughter still echoed in his ears, but he carried it differently now, like a weight he chose not to drop. She had left in her shiny car, her tires splashing through the puddles as if to stamp her victory into the wet ground. But victories built on pride never last. Keanu knew that, even though part of him still felt the sting of what had just happened. Humiliation had a way of digging under the skin. No matter how calm he looked, his heart was not still. As he sat inside his old car, the seat creaking under him, he stared at the steering wheel. His reflection in the rearview mirror showed tired eyes. Eyes that had seen enough of life to know pain was not the enemy. It was the teacher. Still, he could not shake the image of her face, the smirk, the cutting words, the judgment that seemed to erase all the years he had worked to remain grounded. He started the car, the engine coughing before settling into a soft hum. People around whispered again, some with pity, others with quiet respect. The young boy from earlier, the one who had spoken about respect, waved at him shyly. Keanu lowered the window and gave the boy a nod, a small gesture, but one filled with gratitude. It reminded him that even in the darkest moments, there were always eyes watching, not with judgment, but with hope. The road stretched ahead, wet from the water that spilled from the wash. As he drove, he thought about the past, the times when love had been real, the days when he and his ex had dreamed of a life together, simple yet honest. He remembered how she used to laugh at small things, how she once told him that kindness was the most attractive quality in a person. How strange it was that the very thing she once valued was now the reason she despised him. Life changes people. Fame changes people. Pain changes people. But what hurt the most was knowing he had not changed, at least not in the way she thought. He still valued humility over pride, still believed that respect was worth more than gold. And yet, in her eyes, that made him weak. The thoughts spun inside his mind like a storm. He parked the car outside a small diner, one of the few places in the city where no one cared about fame. It was quiet, with the smell of coffee and old wood filling the air. He sat at a corner booth, staring out the window as rain began to fall lightly. That was when another figure entered the diner. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a jacket that looked too thin for the weather. Keanu recognized him instantly, though he had not seen him in years. It was Daniel, a childhood friend, someone who had once stood beside him when no one else did. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the silence broke. "Keanu?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying both surprise and warmth. Keanu nodded. "It's been a long time." They shook hands, and Daniel sat across from him. But Daniel's smile faded quickly as he noticed the look in Keanu's eyes. He leaned forward. "Something happened," he said quietly. "I can see it." Keanu didn't want to share, not because he was ashamed, but because he believed some wounds were too personal. Yet something about Daniel's presence, the old bond they shared, opened the door. Slowly, he told him about the car wash, the encounter, the humiliation, the words that felt like knives. Daniel listened without interrupting. When Keanu finished, Daniel's face tightened. "She doesn't know who you really are," he said. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe the world doesn't either." Those words hit Keanu harder than his ex's insults, because they were true. The world saw a star, a man of movies and money. They saw the surface, but not the man beneath. The one who rode the subway, who shared meals with strangers, who lived simply despite all the fame. Daniel leaned closer. "Listen, brother. Humiliation can be a curse, but it can also be a mirror. Maybe this isn't about her. Maybe it's about you. About showing people that respect isn't just a word, it's a way of living. And maybe the world needs to see that again." Keanu looked down at his hands. They were steady, but inside, something began to stir. Daniel was right. This wasn't just about an old relationship or one cruel encounter. This was about something bigger. A chance to remind people that true strength doesn't roar. It stands quietly, even when the world laughs. But as he sat there, Keanu didn't know that his humiliation at the car wash was about to spread beyond that small place. Someone had filmed it. Someone had already uploaded it. By the time he left the diner, millions of eyes would be watching, judging, whispering, deciding. And the storm he thought had passed was only just beginning. The video that spread the morning came with a gray sky and restless air. Keanu woke up early, his body still heavy from the weight of yesterday's humiliation. He made himself coffee in silence, the smell filling the small kitchen. He thought about Daniel's words again, about respect being more than just a word. He tried to find peace in them, but peace was not waiting for him outside his door. His phone buzzed with messages, notifications lighting up the screen like sparks in the dark. At first, he ignored them. He had grown used to the noise of the world, to people reaching for his name for attention. But when the calls grew louder and Daniel's number appeared on the screen, he finally answered. "Keanu," Daniel's voice was urgent. "You need to see this. It's everywhere." Keanu frowned. "What's everywhere?" Daniel hesitated before saying, "The car wash. Someone filmed it. It's online. Millions are watching." Keanu sat still, the words pressing into his chest like cold stone. He picked up his phone, opened the browser, and there it was. The video. Grainy, shaky, but clear enough. His ex's voice rang out sharp and cruel, her laughter echoing while he stood silently beside his old car. The title burned across the screen. Keanu Reeves gets humiliated at car wash. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some laughed, mocking him. Others pitied him. But some saw something else. Comments flooded the screen. He didn't even fight back. That's real strength. Humility in a world of pride. Respect to this man. This is why I've always admired Keanu. But there were cruel ones, too. Look at him. Weak. Money can't save you from humiliation. He deserves it. Keanu scrolled slowly, his heart steady but heavy. He knew the world loved to build and break people. One moment you were a hero, the next you were a joke. And sometimes the truth got buried under the noise. The phone rang again. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was his agent. Her voice was sharp, almost panicked. "Keanu, this is bad press. People are making jokes, memes. The studios will be watching. You need to say something. Fight back. Clear your image." But Keanu only said, "No, I won't fight pride with pride." The line went silent for a moment, then the agent sighed, frustrated. "You don't understand. The world won't respect silence." But Keanu did understand. Silence was not weakness. Silence was choice. Later that day, he walked out into the city streets, wearing the same plain clothes he always wore. People stared, whispered, some even took photos. A group of young men nearby laughed as one shouted, "Hey, car wash star! Need help scrubbing your old car? Their laughter followed him like shadows. But just as the sting of mockery grew sharper, a different sound cut through. A soft voice. Mr. Reeves? Keanu turned. It was the same young boy from the car wash, holding a small bag of groceries. His eyes were shy, but filled with respect. I saw the video, the boy said. People are laughing, but I told my father that what you did, it was real strength. You didn't fight back. You showed respect. He said that makes you braver than all of them. Keanu's chest tightened. He bent down slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. Thank you, he said softly. Don't forget that, no matter what the world tells you. The boy smiled, then ran off into the crowd. And in that brief moment, Keanu felt something shift inside him. Maybe this humiliation wasn't meant to destroy him. Maybe it was meant to remind people that kindness could stand tall even in the face of cruelty. But as the day turned into night, another storm approached. His ex had seen the video too, and instead of shame, she saw opportunity. She appeared on a talk show, dressed in elegance, speaking with a smile that hid daggers. I only spoke the truth, she said into the camera. Keanu has always been too humble, too quiet. That's not strength, that's weakness. People may admire it now, but in the real world, it doesn't work. The audience clapped, the host laughed along, and the fire grew hotter. Keanu saw the clip later, alone in his home. And though his face remained calm, his heart whispered a question he could not ignore. How long could he carry this weight in silence before the world crushed him completely? The storm grows louder, the city never truly slept. But tonight it felt restless in a different way. Screens in cafes, phones in the hands of strangers, televisions inside small apartments, all were playing the same clip. The car wash, the laughter, the silence, and the image of Keanu standing quietly, his old car behind him, while his ex's sharp words cut through the air. Keanu tried to stay away from it, but the world no longer gave him that choice. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Some with admiration, some with pity, others with cruel amusement. Humiliation had become entertainment. At a small grocery store, as he picked up bread and fruit, he heard two men near the counter whispering, he could have shut her up with one line. Instead, he stood there like a fool. Yeah, I don't get why people are calling it strength. He looked weak. Their words stung, but Keanu did not react. He paid for his groceries and walked out, his silence heavier than the bag in his hands. Later that evening, Daniel came over. He had been watching everything unfold too, and his frustration grew with each passing day. You can't just let this go on, Daniel said firmly. She's making you look like a man with no backbone. The world believes her version of strength. Keanu sat on the couch, his eyes fixed on the floor. If I fight back, I become what she wants me to be. Prideful, angry, just like her. That's not who I am. Daniel shook his head. But silence can kill you too. People will twist it. They'll use it to define you. Keanu leaned back, his voice soft but steady. Then let them. My life isn't about winning arguments. It's about living by values. I can't betray them, even if it costs me everything. But Daniel's warning was not without truth, because the storm outside was not slowing down. His ex continued her appearances. One night she sat on another talk show, her voice sweet but filled with poison. People keep calling Keanu kind, she said, smiling. But kindness without strength is useless. In real life, you need to stand up, fight, prove yourself. And he never could. The audience clapped again, but this time something else happened. A voice from the back called out, loud enough for the cameras to catch. Respect is strength! The studio fell silent for a moment. The host laughed it off quickly, moving the show along, but that single voice had cracked the perfect mask she was trying to wear. The clip of that moment went viral too. Comments poured in. Respect is strength. That's the truth. She doesn't get it. Humility is power. The world needs more people like Keanu, not less. The storm was no longer just about humiliation. It was becoming a debate. Kindness versus pride. Humility versus arrogance. And people were choosing sides. But for Keanu, the noise was overwhelming. The world he tried to live quietly in was pulling him into a battle he had never asked for. He spent long nights staring at the ceiling, asking himself silent questions. Was his way of life really understood anymore? Or was the world too loud, too hungry for pride, to ever value humility again? Yet, even in the darkness, small lights appeared. Letters began to arrive at his door, handwritten notes from strangers. Some said thank you for showing them that silence could be powerful. Others shared their own stories of humiliation, of being mocked for choosing peace instead of anger. One letter, written in shaky handwriting from an elderly woman, read, "My husband used to say, 'True men never shout, they simply endure.' When I saw you on that video, I remembered his words. Thank you for reminding me." Keanu held that letter in his hands for a long time, his eyes wet with quiet tears. It was then he understood. This storm was not just about him anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been laughed at for choosing kindness. It was about every silent person who had been mistaken for weak. But the world was not finished testing him. Late one night, as he walked home, he found himself cornered by a group of young men, their faces half hidden under hoodies, their voices dripping with mockery. "Look who it is," one sneered. "The weak star. The car wash fool." Another shoved him lightly. "Say something now. Show us your respect." Keanu stood still, his eyes calm, his hands by his side. He did not raise his voice. He did not push back. His silence, once again, seemed to confuse them. But this time things went further. One of them swung a fist, hitting his shoulder. Laughter followed, but Keanu did not move. He simply looked at them, his gaze steady, almost sorrowful. And in that gaze, something shifted. The laughter began to fade. One of the younger boys lowered his eyes, suddenly ashamed. They left quickly, muttering to each other, but the silence Keanu left behind haunted them. He walked home with a sore shoulder but his spirit unbroken. Yet he knew the storm had only grown stronger. Because now it wasn't just words, it was action. And soon, the whole world would demand from him not just silence, but an answer. Forced into the spotlight, the world had turned his silence into a firestorm. Talk shows debated him every night. Newspapers printed headlines with his name, twisting it into a question. Is Keanu Reeves weak or wise? Social media split in half, some mocking him, others defending him like a hero. But Keanu never asked for this battle. He only wanted peace, to live quietly, to let kindness speak without needing a stage. Still, the storm would not let him rest. One morning, as he sat in the diner again, sipping his coffee in the same quiet corner, Daniel slid into the booth across from him. His friend's face was tight with urgency. "They've invited you to speak," Daniel said. "A live interview. Millions will be watching." Keanu shook his head. "I don't want it." "You don't have a choice," Daniel replied firmly. "If you don't speak, she wins. The world will think your silence means defeat. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone who believes respect matters." Keanu looked out the window, watching people walk by, each carrying their own burdens. He thought about the letters he had received. The boy at the car wash. The woman who remembered her husband's wisdom. He realized Daniel was right. This was no longer just about his pride, it was about something greater. So, after weeks of silence, Keanu agreed. The night of the interview came. The studio was bright, filled with cameras, lights, and the hum of expectation. The host greeted him with a smile that felt too sharp, too eager for drama. His ex was there too, sitting across from him, dressed in perfection, her confidence glowing like armor. "Tonight," the host began, "we bring you the man at the center of the world's debate, Keanu Reeves. Humiliated in public, mocked for his silence, praised for his humility, and with him, the woman at the heart of the controversy." The audience leaned forward. The air was thick with tension. The host turned to Keanu's ex first. "You've said before that humility is weakness. Do you stand by that?" She smiled, her voice smooth. "Absolutely. The world is not kind. You can't survive by being soft. Strength is about power, control, proving you're above others. Keanu never understood that. That's why he looks weak now." The audience clapped lightly, some nodding. Then the host turned to Keanu. "And what do you say to that? Millions are watching. Is humility weakness?" The studio fell silent. Keanu took a breath. He did not rush. He let the silence stretch, not out of fear, but out of choice. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm, steady, yet carrying weight. "The world will always confuse silence with weakness. But silence is not weakness. It is control. It is refusing to let anger guide you. Power does not come from shouting louder. It comes from standing firm in who you are, even when the world laughs." The audience shifted, murmuring. His ex rolled her eyes, but he continued. "Cars break, money fades, fame disappears, but respect lasts forever. Respect is strength. It is the one thing no one can take from you unless you give it away. I chose not to fight at the car wash, not because I couldn't, but because I knew winning that fight meant losing myself, and that, to me, is the greatest loss." The studio went silent. Even the host looked caught off guard. Then, slowly, a clap began. One person, then another. Soon the whole audience stood, their applause echoing like thunder. His ex sat stiffly, her smile cracking, her confidence shaking. The mask she wore slipped, if only for a moment. The clip of that night spread faster than the original humiliation. This time, the headlines were different. Keanu Reeves, silence is not weakness. But even as the world applauded, Keanu knew the test was not over. Because storms don't vanish with one speech. Sometimes, they grow stronger. And deep inside, he felt something darker was still waiting for him. The final test the night after the interview, the world felt different. Keanu's words had shaken people in ways he never imagined. The clip was everywhere, spreading across countries, translated into different languages, shared in classrooms, offices, and homes. But storms do not end because of applause. Sometimes they end with silence. Sometimes they end with something far more personal. Days later, Keanu was walking down a quiet street near the edge of the city. The lights were dim, the sound of traffic far away. He carried nothing but a small bag of groceries. For a moment, he felt peace again. Then a car pulled up beside him. The door opened, and his ex stepped out. Gone was the glamour she wore on television. Her hair was tied back, her eyes tired, her voice low. "Keanu," she said softly. He stopped but did not speak. She looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "I didn't expect things to turn out this way. I thought humiliating you would make me stronger, more respected. But now, the world sees me as cruel, heartless." Her voice cracked, the pride she once carried slipping away. "I thought pride was everything. I thought kindness was weakness. I was wrong. You proved me wrong." Keanu stood in silence, the cold air wrapping around them. He saw her differently now, not as the woman who mocked him, not as the voice that humiliated him, but as a person broken by her own choices. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm. The world doesn't need more people who fight to stand above others. It needs people who lift others up. You chose pride. I chose respect. We live with the choices we make. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she had no words. Keanu could have walked away. He could have left her standing there in her regret. But instead, he did something no one expected. He stepped closer, gently placed the grocery bag on the ground, and offered his hand. "It's never too late to change," he said quietly. She stared at his hand, her pride battling her heart. Finally, with shaking fingers, she took it. And in that moment, the storm that had started at the car wash came to its true end, not with victory or defeat, but with forgiveness. The next day, the world saw a picture. Not from a staged event, not from a show, but from a passerby with a phone. It showed Keanu and his ex walking side by side, no anger, no pride, only quiet understanding. The caption read, "Respect is strength." Letters poured in again, more than before. Parents wrote about teaching their children humility. Young people shared stories of standing tall without shouting. Old wounds healed because one man chose silence over anger, kindness over pride. And for Keanu, life returned to its simple rhythm. He still drove his old car. He still ate at small diners. He still walked among people quietly, unnoticed at times, respected at others. But now, he carried with him the knowledge that the storm had not destroyed him. It had revealed him. Because in the end, the world did not remember the humiliation. They remembered the response. They remembered the silence that turned into strength and the kindness that turned into power. Keanu had been tested in front of millions, stripped of pride, mocked by those who didn't understand. But he endured, not by fighting louder, but by standing true. And in doing so, he proved one simple truth. Humility is not weakness. Respect is not weakness. Kindness is not weakness. They are the strongest things of all.